One. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Christine Nicholas, Chair of New York State Tourism Advisory Council, and I'd like to call this meeting to order at 11:03. We start by taking attendance of those video conferencing, and I'll call the names from the RSVP list that I have here. So for TAC members, Barbara Lee Diamondstein Spielvogel, Dan Fuller.
I'm here. Good morning.
Very good. Hi, Dan. George and Tim, see you.
I'm here, Christine. Yep.
George. Assemblyman Danny O'Donnell.
I'm here.
Hello. Let's see. George Damalis from Senator Serrano's office. Not yet. Okay. And Corey, is Corey joining us now? Corey Fram? Mm-hmm. All right, excellent. He's our guest speaker. Hey, Corey. And I see, let's see. Did anybody else join? Was Tom Mulroy? I think he said he was
yes,
here.
I heard Tom.
Yes.
Tom Mulroy?
Yep. Tom's here. Yep.
Morning, Tom.
How
Morning,
about
Russ.
Catherine Nichols? And Alana Petroselli? And Eleanor Tatum, I think, is going to join us. I don't know if she's on yet. Eleanor? She on yet? Okay, she'll join us. And Thurman Thomas. You can understand if he's not with us today. It was a rough day. Yeah. Yesterday with the Bills game. Okay, so now we will. Is there anyone on the line that I haven't called out? Did you say? Oh, Rich, of course.
I'm here.
Yes, always. Thank you, Rich. All right, so just as a reminder for those conferencing in, please put yourselves on mute to eliminate any background noise during the meeting. And if you want to say something, just feel free to unmute yourself. There may be a hand. So then Sarah could see that your hand is raised also. Could be an icon. Now I'm going to go around the room. I'm going to start with Valerie. Valerie Novel.
Present.
Okay.
Natasha Caputo.
Yep.
David Filipiak.
Excellent. Lisa Soto, I Love New York.
Martha Wilson, I Love New York.
Rowena Seguli, I Love New York.
Heather McKellany, I Love New York.
Ross Levi, I Love New York.
And Sarah Emmer, I Love New York.
So much love for me. I know.
All right.
That always sounds like a support group.
So all the TAC members have been emailed a copy of the minutes, and they're also available on the ESD website. Are there any changes to the minutes? Okay, is that?
Oh, wireless. Answer?
No.
It's not us.
Okay, so, whoops, okay. Apologize for that. All right, so I need a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Okay, Valerie, I need a second.
Second.
All right, Natasha, all in favor, or I'm going to say any opposed? Any opposed? Okay, none hearing any opposed, the motion carries and the minutes are approved. Okay.
You're good.
Hey, Kellyanne Curtin from NYC and Company's joining us. All right, so I hope you all had a nice holiday season. Had a chance to see a lot of Ross lately over the holidays. He's been working very hard. So let me just go over what has happened recently. And so for my report, I just want to highlight some tourism-related announcements. And first, I want to announce that Anthony Davidovitz has resigned from the council effective December 31st. And I want to thank Anthony for his service and participation with TAC and for his contributions to the state's tourism industry, especially through his work at Storm King Arts Center, of which we took a tour this summer, which was really rewarding. And we wish him all the best in the future endeavors. And additionally, due to a conflict with IPW, in May, we'll be moving the May 22nd TAC meeting to Wednesday, May 31st. So please take a note of the change. We will send it by email, but I do hope that fits with your calendars. It also gives us a chance, I think, to get an update from IPW on what transpired there. And May is National Tourism Month, so we are going to be very busy and in touch in May. So in November, Governor Hochul announced the reopening of the Phillips Manor Hall State Historic Site in Yonkers after a $20 million renovation of the building and grounds, as well as design of new exhibits. As one of the oldest national historic sites in Yonkers, Phillips Manor provides a look into early colonial era life in New York State, and new exhibits incorporate the journeys of the Phillips family and the extensive role that Africans and indigenous people had in shaping our state's history. Previously, the manor would see approximately 15,000 visitors a year, many school groups, because I know I went there on a school trip with my kids, but the site expects visitation to double in the coming year. Additionally, the governor announced the Olana State Historic Site will undergo major capital and site improvement projects over the next 2 years, including construction of the Frederick Church Center for Art and Landscape, a new entry and orientation facility at the historic site in Hudson, Columbia County. The sustainable, designed, all-electric Frederick Church Center will be a gateway to all visitors at Olana State Historic Site, and it's the marquee project of a $25 million investment, which includes $1.4 million grant from ESD's Market New York program. Construction is set to begin in spring of 2023 with an opening date of spring of 2024.
And I'll just mention, anyone who's been to Alana, I mean, it's an incredible gem for tourism in New York State. I think it's fair to say the welcome experience has not been worthy of the gem that it was. You kind of went into a barn they had there. It was functional, but now you're going, as you can see, there's going to be this beautiful state-of-the-art center with more parking, that is going to be your welcome experience. And they have it designed in a way that it also follows what Frederick Church wanted, which was kind of this build up to the building and the grounds. So, you sort of start in the woods and move up to the spectacular reveal. So I'm excited about it.
Hudson Valley's excited. I love that place. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
So with it being ski season, the venues of Gore, Bel Air, Whiteface, and Mount Hovenberg opened following investments in facility upgrades, renovations, and snowmaking infrastructure ahead of the winter season, which helps support New York's $16 billion winter tourism industry. Over the past 6 years, New York State has invested more than $550 million in ORDA facilities. This includes the completion of the Lake Placid Olympic Center's $104 million renovation, which includes a new retail shop, indoor and outdoor dining, and a fully updated Lake Placid Olympic museums. Thanks to these modernization efforts, ORDA facilities are able to improve operations and open early in the season, while also supporting large-scale events such as the Lake Placid 2023 FISU World University Games, which wrapped up yesterday, which Ross had the chance to be with the hockey team today?
The Swedish hockey team was at the Albany train station this morning, heading back, and I asked them. I thought they were. They looked like it. I asked, "Are you guys coming from the World University Games?" They said, "Yes." I said, "How'd you do?" They went, "Did you have fun?" They said, "Oh, yes." Very good. So I thank them for coming.
Good feedback. For NISCA funding, at last TAC meeting, we mentioned an unprecedented level of capital funding available across the state for arts and cultural organizations. At the end of November, the governor announced nearly $45 million in grant awards has been made to over 1,200 arts groups, including museums, visual art programs, arts education organizations. These grants will go a long way in supporting arts organizations and artists as they return to pre-pandemic levels of capacity and creation. NISCA's $100 million capital funding grant application period also closed earlier this month, and we look forward to hearing more about these awards in the coming year. Nexus Center in Utica. In December, Governor Hochul announced the grand opening of the $64 million Nexus Center in downtown Utica, thanks to the state support, which includes $22 million through the Upstate Revitalization Initiative. The 170,000 square foot tournament-based recreation and sporting complex will be utilized for ice hockey, box lacrosse, soccer, and other field sports, and will draw competitive youth teams from across the U.S. and Canada. The Nexus Center is projected to host 24 hockey and 24 lacrosse tournaments each year, welcoming more than 320,000 annual visitors and generating over $26 million annually in direct visitor spend. The Niagara Falls projects. In an effort to attract new visitors and development to downtown Niagara Falls, the governor announced 2 transformative projects, including a $12 million Niagara Falls Heritage Gateways project and transformational of the Niagara Gorge Discovery Center. The Gateways project, which is comprised of 5 public gateway features intended to stimulate reinvestment in Niagara Falls, aims to expand activities downtown while strengthening the connections between downtown Niagara Falls and Niagara Falls State Park. This includes new observation decks and installation of multi-use outdoor pavilions for performances and recreation. In addition, New York State Parks Office approved an agreement authorizing the Aquarium of Niagara to manage operations at the currently closed Niagara Gorge Discovery Center. Construction will now start in transforming the Niagara Gorge Discovery Center into Great Lakes 360, an exciting new space for Great Lakes-focused exhibits. This project also received both capital and working capital Market New York grants to support renovations and improvements that Ross will discuss more in a moment. These new projects, which aim for openings in 2024, will help draw even more visitors to the region and help tie the downtown area to one of the state's most iconic tourism attractions. And finally, last year, the governor signed into law legislation to develop a plan to commemorate the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution and establish the 250th Commemoration Commission Fund. The 13-member commission will be co-chaired by Parks Commissioner Eric Kulisade, Commissioner of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, and State Education Commissioner Betty Rosa. It also includes the New York State historian as well as stakeholders from across the state with knowledge of history, historic preservation, and tourism. They will support and facilitate local efforts by heritage organizations, municipalities, and other planning and program. I was proud to be appointed to this commission and will be working closely with the I Love New York team to represent the state's tourism industry at these meetings in the coming months. So stay tuned for more information on that commission. And that concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Okay, well, then I'm going to send it over to Ross.
Thank you. Good to see everybody. Thank you for those who were able to brave the weather, including those my colleagues who came from upstate with us in their snow this morning. We're here in the new year, which means there's a lot going on in Albany. The governor's state of the state, for example, hopefully some of you got to see, was earlier this month. The governor presented a very targeted agenda for this year's legislative session. In the book that is released in conjunction with the speech, she actually called out tourism as being one of the industries that was an envy of the world. So we were happy to see that, recognizing us as a top driver and a top industry and a top economic driver. There were a number of proposals that she talked about even in her targeted shorter speech that will benefit New York State travel and tourism, even though they weren't specifically about tourism per se. That included investments to public transit, both in upstate regions and downstate, to make it safer, more affordable, and accessible to all. There was one example in particular, expanding the MTA City ticket, which provides Metro-North and Long Island Railroad customers with a low-cost flat fare to travel within New York City during off-peak hours. That's now going to be expanded, or at least the proposal is, to include peak hours for a modest premium. And that should hopefully assist commuters and visitors coming to the city. They'll have a new incentive to come to the city, and hopefully will benefit more than 10,000 trips on an average weekday. So hopefully that will be a help to New York City tourism. Governor also mentioned expansion of workforce development initiatives to help expand and modernize training and career centers. We know the tourism industry is very much impacted by the workforce issue that many others are, perhaps us even more so. She discussed indexing New York's minimum wage to inflation, which will help thousands of low-wage workers out of poverty, and public safety measures to help offset concerns over rising cases of crimes, which we know is important for the perception of visitors. The governors also will be releasing her executive budget any day now, literally, and that will also give us more of a sense of her vision for the upcoming year. As we've mentioned at previous TAC meetings, we already know a number of projects we're going to be working on for the upcoming year here at the Division of Tourism, including some new work, such as expanding our travel trade work, which we haven't done nearly to the scale we're going to be doing it now, upscaling our international work, supporting outdoor recreation efforts. So there's a lot going on, and we're excited for the new year and all the work that lies ahead. I will have more on that, but first we wanted to talk about marketing, winter marketing, and Rich Gagliano, who hoped to be here but was just coming back from his second visit to the FISU World University Games in Lake Placid. Came back yesterday feeling a little under the weather and didn't want to spread anything to any TAC members. So thankfully, we miss him, but happy to see him here on Zoom.
Thanks, Ross. Yeah, hopefully it's a combination of maybe getting a little sick, but I think the back and forth, a lot of driving, but it was really exciting to be up there twice. And as Ross just mentioned, there's a lot of action going on, a lot of activity right now. And this winter in particular has been very active for I Love New York in terms of marketing. So I'll go through a few initiatives, but first off, there's our core statewide winter execution, which has been running on broadcast and digital since early December. Once again, the goal of this execution is to illustrate all the variety and the breadth of fun and unique activities available in New York State during the winter season. Hopefully you've seen this running. Like I said, it's been running since mid-December and scheduled to run through mid-February. But we'll take a second and play that now for anyone who hasn't seen it before.
Find your wonderland this winter in New York State. From the mountain peaks to cozy adventures and everything in between. It's all here. Plan your getaway at iloveny.com.
Great. So like I said, that's our core winter statewide spot. It's targeting our in-state market as well as drive markets, and should be running through mid-February. And then as we've been talking about, the FISU games, they've been running for the past 10 days. They launched last Thursday, I believe. The opening ceremonies were the governor was there. A lot of Ross was there, a lot of ESD representation, dozens of other state agencies involved in pulling this together. So it's good to see a lot of people involved in working on this for the past few years in person up there on Thursday. As Ross said, I was lucky enough to make 2 trips. I was up there last weekend and then this past weekend, and I was able to check out all of the new renovated facilities that Christine was talking about. Morning hockey games at the Herb Brooks Arena, went over to Whiteface, took the lift up and watched some of the downhill and slalom, was able to make it over to Mount Van Hovenberg to look at some of the Nordic races, the curling facilities. Everything is just beautiful. And it was great that the state has made the decision to take these facilities that were built almost 40 years ago and bring them up to current standards to be able to put Lake Placid and the whole region on a global stage.
Rich was even able to experience skeleton. So
I did, and also Ross, I did the bobsled this weekend too.
Excellent.
Yeah, the bobsled experience and the skeleton experience. Both
Never do that. It's scary. Yeah.
And Rich and I got to tour the new Olympic Museum. Again, similar theme with Alana. The old museum, the artifacts were so incredible that it was just an amazing place to be, to see Sonia Henning skates and Miracle on Ice stuff, But now it is in a state-of-the-art, just beautiful facility. They literally have a wall, a case of Olympic torches through the years. There's AV. You get to actually do VR of being in a bobsled or going down a ski jump. And it is head and feet above what it was before. So it took what was already kind of a cool place into a really world-class museum.
Yep. And at the end, you can actually basically touch the actual goal that was used in the Miracle on Ice game and the equipment and the goal, the goalie equipment, uniforms from that game. And also I learned, not to go too deep into this, I didn't know this little fact, but there was one of the Russians who won the silver in 1980, left their medal behind. And to this, it's displayed in the hockey section of the museum with an explanation that says, we don't know who this was, but someone left it behind, and we could speculate that they were just either ashamed or weren't sure how the reaction was going to be when they got back. But they just left their silver medal behind, and it's on display in that area. So, highly recommended for everyone.
And just because Rich and I love to geek out on trivia, we also found out that the Lake Placid Games were the first in the 30s, the first Winter Games, were the first Olympic Games ever to have the 3-tiered platform. That was an idea for Lake Placid. The first person to stand on that was a Lake Placid local, an athlete who took the oath on behalf of all the athletes. And then later that day, he turned out to be the first medal winner to be atop that as well.
Ooh.
So I thought that was really great. No, a skater, I think speed skater.
Oh.
So I thought that was
Yeah,
great
that's
trivia.
That's good.
But yeah, no, it was really great to be up there. And, you know, a lot of people here at ESD and the other state agencies have been working on not only the games, but on the renovations. And it's just great to see them all coming to life. You know, it was great. The main street was closed off, and you see jackets from, I think the official number of countries participating was, I think it was 50 plus. But just walking around the streets, you can see jackets from all over the world. You know, the Japan team walking around. There was actually the Ukraine team was there. Ross and I were at the opening ceremony, which was a great moment when the Ukraine team was announced. You know, they got an extra large standing ovation. Just amazing that these people train. You know, we all know what's going on over there. For them to make it over here for a global sporting event was just, you know, it was amazing to be a part of that. So again, the games were great. The closing ceremonies were last night. I don't know if anyone was able to tune in, but the gold medal hockey game was being broadcast on actual ESPN, you know, the cable channel there. I think there was over 150 hours of coverage across multiple ESPN platforms and streaming services. But the gold medal game last night was on ESPN. Unfortunately, its competition on TV was the Bills game, but maybe a lot of people tuned out of the Bills game a little bit early when we were able to catch the end of the U.S. hockey game. Unfortunately, U.S. lost to Canada. I think it was 6-2, but it was a good game. It looked great just to see that, you know, Lake Placid on that global stage. So just from a marketing perspective, leading up to the games, we put together a campaign that ran digitally that was designed to both, you know, talk about the games specifically, but not just in the context of those 10 days. We wanted to use the games as an example of all of the great activities that you can do, you know, either go watch the games or participate in yourself all winter long in the Lake Placid Adirondack region. So we'll play that video that was running digitally. Like I said, it was helping to drive ticket sales somewhat, but it was more about an awareness campaign for the region, using the games framing the games as an example of all the great things up in that area. So Sarah, if you want to play that now.
It's winter, and the mountains are ready. Lake Placid is ready. Ready for them. Ready for you. Watch as the world's greatest athletes compete at the 2023 Lake Placid Winter World University Games, and come experience it for yourself in the Adirondacks all winter long. Plan your trip at ilovenewyork.com.
So again, you know, thanks to the LP23 organizing committee, FORDA, ESD for their representation, and like I said, dozens of other state agencies involved in this. It's been a long time coming. I think it probably goes back. The earliest conversations were probably close to 5 years ago, and it wrapped up last night. So job well done for everyone involved. It was great to see Lake Placid put on that, on a global stage across, broadcast, TV, the people who came to visit, and hopefully word keeps spreading that this is the place to be for these types of world-class activities. And then finally, we're also about to launch our first effort in a number of years, specifically dedicated to promote New York as a ski destination. Many may not realize, but New York State has more ski areas than any other state, and we wanted to help get that word out. To reach as broad an audience as possible, we've included 3 core messaging points in the creative. One, with the amount of ski areas across the state, no matter where you are, there's always a ski area that's relatively close and easy to get to. Second point we wanted to get across in these commercials were that there's an opportunity here for beginners. You know, it's not just about people who ski on a regular basis. We wanted to let people know that there's plenty of opportunity for beginners and people who are learning to get that next generation of skiers out there and get them trying it in New York, not in a competitive state. I won't name any. And then the third point is, even if you don't ski, or even if there are members of your family that don't ski, there's still plenty for them to do at these ski areas, everything from spas to hanging out at the lodge, tubing. So it's not all about, well, I don't ski, so this is not relevant to me. I'll play that video in a second, but this campaign is also supported by a dedicated I Love New York landing page. I think it should be up on the screen right now. That allows you to sort of zoom in on the map based on the area you're looking to travel to, and all those sort of snowflake icons. When you click on it, it pops up the information about that specific ski area or ski resort that you're looking to find more information on. And we've also, I don't know if we have images of this in the deck, but we're also helping to support this campaign through the ad screens in Moynihan Train Hall. So I don't know if you've all had a chance to check out Moynihan yet, but they have a number of large video screens throughout the hall that are just really great for this type of advertising. We've been working with them closely to help promote I Love New York efforts as much as possible. So we will play, sorry if you can play that video right now, the ski video, it would be great.
With more ski areas than any other state, a perfect ski getaway is never too far away in New York. From expert-level mountains to beginner-friendly trails to fun beyond the slopes. There's something for everyone in New York State. Plan your trip today at iloveny.com.
I was just at Moynihan and saw it.
Oh, nice.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So that's a sort of a high level recap on some of our marketing activities this winter. Again, it's been busy all around. So if there's any questions, or if not, we can move on.
Great. Thank you, Rich.
Thanks.
I think somebody's on hold.
Yeah, we're not sure.
So we gotta.
We'll check on it.
Hey, Rich or vendor, Rich.
We'll see if we could silence that, but we'll keep talking till we do. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Also looking forward, we are just a couple weeks away from the American Bus Association Marketplace, ABA, happening in Detroit, February 4th through 7th. I Love New York is sponsoring the New York State DMO Association's activation at this year's ABA, as we have for a couple of years now. As I think many of you know, the marketplace features motor coach, tour operators, and travel industry suppliers from across the country looking to expand the tour and group travel business. So it's a good opportunity for us. We've participated along with the DMO Association for the past few years, knowing that there's going to be 300 tour operators there, more than 50 representatives from destinations, hotels, and attractions across New York State, and we can help bring some additional leadership and back up those efforts. So we are going to be a part of an I Love New York branded booth with our logo and our vacation regions map, which will be staffed throughout the show to connect with tour operators. I will be participating in over 30. They're 7 minutes long, so you're literally running around the hall from one to another. Over 30 pre-scheduled one-on-one appointments with qualified buyers. I will be presenting at a breakfast that New York State has been hosting for a couple of years now for operators, with a special guest from the National Comedy Center. We've had a comedian that's getting to be a little thing now. I guess it's the third time we've had a comedian. And Monday turns out to be kind of New York State Day at ABA, because Monday is the morning is our breakfast. The folks from Broadway host a luncheon for group travel. And then we have our dine around in the evening. So we really get to make a good impression with this market. So we're looking forward to that. And I'll be happy to report on that at the next meeting once I'm back. But this is actually an example of domestic travel trade work that we've done for a few years now. As I've mentioned, it's largely the only domestic trade work we've done for a few years. We do a lot internationally, of course, but we've been wanting to get into this area more. And as you remember, I've mentioned in past meetings, thanks to our grant from the Federal Economic Development Authority, we are now going to be able to do more of that travel trade work in the MICE, amateur sports, and group travel segments area. So we're excited about that. To be precise, $6 million of the EDA grant that we received will be used to do this travel trade work through fall of 2025. And so we are quickly getting up to speed to get into that work in earnest. That includes aligning our staff to help support this work. So Mark Lee Wilson will be continuing to do our international sales work. Danae Jones-Persip, who many of you have worked with, will be coordinating trade shows, fam trips, and our Brand USA activities. And Heather McElhenney here on my right will be utilizing her experience as a former TPA and actually working in this area to oversee the trade work overall. So we're excited about that. Similarly, we have selected a consulting firm to bolster our trade work and bring their expertise and help us to do all that we have to do. So we're currently finalizing the contract with them. We're also engaging with our partners across the state, knowing that there are a lot of local partners and state trade groups that have been doing this work for some time. And this isn't the opportunity for New York State to come in and say, well, never mind, we're here now. This is the opportunity for us to heed the call of the industry that they've been asking for a number of years to help support them, bring some leadership and resources to the work. So one of the examples of that is we have sub-awards that we're going to be giving out, $15 million worth to DMO partners across the state to help the work they're doing, including with the domestic and international travel trade. We're currently finalizing those awards with the EDA. They have to approve those as well, and the hopes is that they will be announced very soon. And in the meantime, we are also meeting with our TPA partners, some of the state trade groups like NISTIA and the aforementioned DMO Association in New York State. We're actually meeting with New York City and Company tomorrow to make sure that all of our work is coordinated as possible. We know that there's going to be places that we're going to have multiple New York State actors at the same show. We should figure out what that looks like. We want to strategize and figure out maybe we don't all need to be at the same show. Maybe New York State could cover this one. Maybe we don't need to be there, but we could support others. So that's why we're working really hard to have this be a cohesive, complementary strategy. And one of our goals throughout all this work isn't just the work itself between now and 2025, the life of the grant, but to strengthen our capacity to be of service to the travel trade, hopefully ongoing. So we have an eye on building assets that can live on even after the grant. That can include a website and a database and collateral and, a booth, exhibits, et cetera, et cetera. So I look forward to reporting back to you as that full work really comes to fruition, certainly hopefully by our next meeting. I wanted to mention Market New York. Around 12 awards were announced this past December. We had over 140 applicants requesting almost $40 million. Fortunately or unfortunately, it's good that it's competitive. Unfortunately, only $15 million was available out of that 40. So out of the 140 applicants, 69 projects were awarded $15 million. This year, the match requirement for the marketing component, you'll remember that this award, some of it is for capital projects, some of it's for working capital marketing. The match was changed from 25 to 50% in order to have consistency across all our grant programs. That, for example, is what our tourism matching funds are. So that's true for matching funds as well. For Market New York as well. And the proposed projects that aligned with that EDA work that we're focusing on were particularly prioritized. So if they worked in the travel trade, outdoor recreation, or international travel, that was a particular point in favor of the awards. So there are 69 awards. You can take a look at them online. I did want to highlight just a few of them. $40,000 to support the Lake George Music Festival was one. That's an internationally recognized classical music festival, and they plan to use grant funds to promote a new initiative called the Lake George Music Fund Plus Pass. The summer events series promotion will market a season pass valid at the festival's summer performances and events, plus several other cultural and scenic tourist attractions, including local and regional visitation. So it expands the visitation beyond the festival itself. $150,000 to support a marketing campaign to raise awareness of the Central New York arts community. Will attract new and returning visitors to rediscover the region or discover it for the first time, and its rich cultural activities, and expand their experience of the region, promoting return visits. There was a $400,000 grant to support critical renovations at Dia Art Foundation, including facade restoration, addressing climate control and energy efficiency issues, re-landscaping of an area impacting accessibility, creating more accessible gender-neutral and family restrooms, and replacement of their HVAC system. $505,000 to support event programming at NYC. Is it NYC by Design or NYC Design or NYC X Design?
NYC by Design. It's NYC X Design, but you say NYC by Design.
That's what I thought. Thank you, Kelly. I was pretty sure that was the case.
Yeah.
So they received an award highlighting thousands of New York City's creative and business and design businesses by hosting events across the city's 5 boroughs. The project will expand impact through new programming that will drive more visitors to New York City and target inclusive growth for local businesses. And then finally, I wanted to reemphasize that $900,000 capital grant and $100,000 working capital grant to the Aquarium of Niagara to fund a portion of the construction cost to open a new cultural attraction in the Niagara Gorge Discovery Center. And those funds are going to be used to directly appeal to visitors through a regionally based multi-pronged advertising campaign. Heather and I actually got a bit of a hard hat tour of the new facility, the Niagara Gorge Discovery Center. It's going to basically form a campus overlooking the Niagara River Gorge. The aquarium, which is already a wonderful attraction that has received Market New York and other state funds through the years, is just within walking distance down this path to this Discovery Center, the Gorge Discovery Center. It's been there a while, but they're totally reimagining it, basically as an offshoot of the museum and focusing on particularly the aquatic wildlife of the region. So the main aquarium shows, aquatic life from around the world, and then you get to go down to this center, and it's about the region. Plus, it has outdoor overlooks. It's going to be spectacular. So very exciting. But anyway, if you want to see information on all the awardees, feel free to go to the Regional Council website, the ESD Regional Council website at regionalcouncils.ny.gov. So that is my overview of the recent activities. If anybody has any questions, happy to answer.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is the 50% match also for capital?
The capital is higher. The match is, I think, 80%.
Okay.
The grantee has to put in 80, and the state puts in 20.
I just didn't know if that one had changed.
Yeah, no, and that is generally in keeping with most. It's at least comparable to a lot of the capital grants that New York State gives.
I do have a question. I love to hear that you're increasing your spending for domestic travel trade. You mentioned it's a grant through 2025. Does that mean after 2025, are you expecting to return to what you're currently doing, minus the long-term assets?
Well, what a great question. I guess my not-so-secret plan is no, we will continue. Yes, we will continue it.
The grant will run out, but you're hoping to secure...
I'm hoping to be able, a few things. Like I said, first of all, the good news is a lot of the things we are doing will be able to live on, right? The website doesn't have to go away. The collateral, the exhibit will have a booth that we can go and use. Now, that said, we are still going to need resources to continue doing the work. Look, I can't tell if 3 years away whether that is going to be at the same scale as what the federal government dollars are going to let us do. We'll see. But I certainly hope that we will be able to show the value of the work, that it will make sense to continue an investment.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was hoping.
Yes,
to hear.
good. Well, and if the TAC agrees with that particular issue here as the project goes on, that would be good to know too. But certainly my thought is, we've been hearing for years how important this work is. And, the truth is folks who are not involved in the tourism industry, they hear tourism and they're thinking families taking vacations. That's a big part of it, but they don't realize that for much of New York State, the stuff that really changes the game is meetings and trade shows and amateur sports tournaments and bus tours and all these other things. And so we think, like I said, hopefully the dividends will be shown and we'll be able to continue that work, even if not exactly at the same scale, more than it has been, which has been, like I said, if not zero, close to zero.
I think New York is seen as a top-tier state for domestic tourism, but when you do go to the travel trade, there are the other top-tier states that are very competitive, and New York usually is not as aggressive, so it's good to hear that.
Great, thank you.
Well, and we'll be up in Albany on March 18th, so we can reiterate this message as well when we're up there.
It's exciting.
Right, and just another on the expanded travel, which is excellent, and completely agree on the domestic. Is the timing for 2024, and you're just going to go to as many shows this year? What's the rollout, and how can we help from the TPA side?
Yeah, my thought is basically IPW is kind of our first chance. Now, but even there, we're still getting up to speed, so that's not going to be exactly what we hope it to be. But we hope at IPW we'll be able to announce kind of a calendar of what's coming up over the next year or so. I know that the industry's been asking for that for a while, and so we hope to be able to work further ahead now. So my thought is basically from that on, throughout the rest of 2023 and certainly in 2024 is when we'll be able to do this even more in earnest. But the pre-work is already happening.
Right. Well, thank you, because that would be helpful then at IPW just for future plans, right, in our budgets to come. Excellent.
All right. Well, thank you, Ross. good luck having, going to Detroit, February
Yes.
4th.
I want to all.
Good job.
thank
Someone
you.
has to do it.
Everyone now has any ability to affect weather, candles, prayers, whatever it may be.
I've done that February ABA in Detroit, just stay at the closest hotel to the
Yes.
beach. That's the only advice.
One year ABA.
Yes,
Right?
one's with.
1 year was Ohio, it was Omaha, and so I made it there, so, Detroit.
Wow. Well, thank you, Ross. So prior to the pandemic, the TAC started an initiative that every meeting we would have one of the 11 vacation regions leaders come in to update us. So we've already heard from the Adirondacks, Greater Niagara, Finger Lakes, Hudson Valley, and Long Island. So today we have a special guest joining us from the Thousand Islands region of New York State. So Corey Fram is the director of the Thousand Islands International Tourism Council and has agreed to join us remotely today to provide some insights into the region, including main attractions, tourism drivers, and marketing strategy for the region. Welcome, Corey.
Good morning. Thank you. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for your time this morning. I'm going to try and coordinate this best I can with Sarah, but thank you all, and thank you for the introduction. I figured before I got started on really what is the Thousand Islands Sea region, probably the best way to orient the group for those who are unfamiliar with us would be where. So Sarah, if you would, please, can you bring up the map? Thousand Islands Sea region is located in northern New York State along the eastern shore of the last of the Great Lakes, Lake Ontario, and the St. Lawrence River. Essentially, the St. Lawrence River is a very large body of water that carries all of that water from the Great Lakes on and eventually out to the Atlantic Ocean. There's an image in front of you on your screen of just to give you an idea of what the St. Lawrence River really is in terms of scope and in a particular portion of it. For the kind of the boring stuff, the Thousand Islands Sea region is comprised of 3 counties. That's Oswego County on the eastern shore of Lake Ontario, Jefferson County, which is a name that may not be familiar to you because Jefferson counties are kind of like Springfields and that most states have them. Really, the leisure brand for Jefferson County is the Thousand Islands. And then also St. Lawrence County, which is such a large county. It's bigger than the state of Rhode Island that it actually touches on 2 I Love New York regions, both the Thousand Islands Sea region and the Adirondacks. But what you see here is we are way up north. We do share a border with Canada. The waterway is what separates us. So we essentially are that front door, that front porch into the United States and into New York for this portion of Ontario, Canada. Yes, there really are a lot of islands there. There's more than 1,000. I like to tell people a fun fact. There's it's 1,864 islands. They are shared between New York and Ontario, Canada. And we have up here been a leisure destination really since about the mid to late 1800s, when this part of the world was the summer retreat for folks in the cities. New York, Philadelphia, the trains ran from the major cities of the Northeast up to our destination. That's where people would come to escape the heat. And it really became this kind of playground, this beautiful outdoor, sparse, open playground for the rich and the Gilded Age in particular. Sarah, if you would please advance the slide. But our destination today is really one for everyone. And as you can imagine, with all that water surrounding us, much of it is outdoor water-based recreation. While it's a very large geographic area, it's fairly sparsely populated. And so what you have is a lot of outdoor recreation opportunities, a lot of, particularly along the water, fishing, for example. The folks at Bassmasters have been doing some tournaments here, broadcast with their partners, ESPN, Fox. The last couple of years, they've named this North America's greatest fishery a couple of times now in the last few years. Cruising, castles, day cruises, like you see at the top middle portion of your screen, visiting those Gilded Age castles that are sprinkled throughout the region. Also things such as diving, underwater, shipwrecks, a lot of military U.S. history through these waters. And actually the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration is preparing to name Eastern Lake Ontario a National Marine Sanctuary. So that's what you get for a visitor experience here. And it mixes in some of the heritage and cultural sites, particularly military history, War of 1812, places like Sackett's Harbor Battlefield, Fort Ontario and Oswego, Fort de la Presentation in Ogdensburg, Safe Haven Museum down in Oswego County. a lot of those heritage sites and really that tie into American history. There's an image there from regional native Frederick Remington, who's one of America's most well-known artists and whose artwork tends to show up repeatedly, regardless of political affiliation, in the Oval Office. Predominantly, and you can go ahead and advance that slide if you would please, Sarah. Predominantly a leisure destination, although we obviously are active in the travel trade. Predominantly spring through fall, although winter is growing. Relatively speaking, the Thousand Island Sea region is a small part of the visitor spending pie in New York State. We account for about 1%. It's around $576 million, according to Tourism Economics in 2021. Small on the New York State scale, but very significant in terms of our regional economy. And Sarah, if you would please just bring up the button here. A significant portion of our workforce is tied to the travel economy in this region, particularly in my county, Jefferson County, which is where those islands are and where really hospitality and tourism are a long time part of the cultures here. That's what we've been doing, as I said, going back to when we look at the types of spending and really the places where spending happens the most, second homes is significant for us. As you can imagine, with all of that waterfront property on the eastern shore of Lake Ontario, the upper St. Lawrence River, the islands, we have significant investment in second homes. That's why issues such as water levels, Lake Ontario and the St. Lawrence River, that water level is somewhat controlled via a dam system in Messina, New York, and as well as being impacted by climate change. We've had some very high waters. We've had some very low waters going back to 2017 that have really impacted our tourism and travel economy. And so things like second homes, they're providing a lot of the visitor spending in this region, and that's why a water level issue is very important to us. Same thing for food and bev. As you can imagine, this is predominantly a leisure destination. People are going to escape, to relax, to have fun. You don't see lodging pop up as much in this region because truth is we don't have a significant amount of higher end luxury lodging property. They do exist here, but as I mentioned earlier, this really is a relatively low-cost destination for everyone, so to speak. Sarah, if you could please advance to the next slide. One of the things I did want to talk about in terms of what we've been experiencing since the pandemic is a change in market and a change in market demand. The pandemic impacted us most significantly along our northern border to Canada. The picture in front of you is the Thousand Islands Bridge Crossing System. I'm looking at the toll booth as I sit here and speak to you now. So yes, I have an amazing view. And if we can just for a moment, the smallest of the Thousand Islands is actually in this picture. If you look off to the right of the screen a little bit, there's an island sitting out in the middle of the water, and then there's a tiny little speck of green above it. That is Tom Thumb Island, and it makes the cut. To be an island, you have to be above water year round, and you have to support at least one living tree. So Tom Thumb is the smallest. I didn't even notice that was in the picture until I got looking at it. That is our smallest. Our largest is larger than Manhattan. So they really do vary in size. But one of the things that happened in this particular region for us is dealing with the restrictions at the U.S.-Canadian border. We have several crossings in this region, as we do in New York State. But I wanted to hone in on just one. Sarah, if you would please advance the slide. These stats are strictly for one crossing located just outside my window, the Alexander Bay Lansdowne, Ontario crossing. These numbers are strictly Canadians and the Canadians that visited the United States for less than 24 hours. These are short haul travelers. So it's a very narrow look at a short haul traveler, perhaps somebody who might be coming to this region, right? 24 hours or less via car and Canadian citizenship. You're looking at roughly 250,000 pre-pandemic. It drops 80+% in 2020 when the restrictions were imposed in March of 2020. 2021, still under restrictions. We're showing significant improvement, but Sarah, if you'd advance the slide, you'll see that we're still missing almost essentially all of our short haul Canadians using this one particular crossing. And go ahead, Sarah, if you would please advance the slide. This got very confusing for Americans and Canadians that were used to traveling the border, and particularly those of us in tourism trying to draw Canadians down. Because what happened with these restrictions in March of 2020 is essentially the ruling was essential travel only. And that definition changed over the months and frankly years that restriction has been in place. I think we're all used to the tiered system in the various phases. Our border was much the same. And so travel across the border was limited to essential travelers only. Eventually, by November of 2021, the US and Canada say, you know what, we're going to allow travelers for leisure purposes. That had been prohibited from March of 2020 to November of 2021. Leisure was not an acceptable reason to pass through the international border by car on a crossing such as you see in front of you. So November of 2021 comes around, leisure is allowed. To do so, however, you have to fill out some information in an online app to get into Canada, and you need to provide a negative screening for COVID-19 to get into Canada. Now, this is particularly concerning because we want Canadians to travel south. For them to get back home, they had to take a test. That test came with a cost for most Canadians of in excess of $100. So when this particular regulation was in place, it truly favored southern destinations. November 1st of 2021 rolls around, and we have RVs and campers lined all along the Canadian border waiting for midnight. I know that because my office right here within sight of the wonderful North Country Welcome Center built by New York State was filled with RVs and campers. They were headed south because that 100+ test cost was not much of a deterrent if you were going to go spend 2 months in Florida. But it was an extreme deterrent if you just wanted to come to the Thousand Island Sea region, maybe to do some shopping, or to Syracuse to do some shopping. The policy really did stack in favor of further destinations and put a little bit more restriction on border communities such as the one I live in, and border states such as the great New York State that we all get to live and represent. By April of 2022, the testing requirement goes away, and you still have to just complete an app to get into Canada. It's called ArriveCAN. I don't know how anybody else deals with technology, but I can tell you that a lot of folks did not deal well. And so the app would essentially ask you the essential information, why you're crossing and when. But there was a lot of confusion. For example, in the United States, our zip codes are predominantly 5-digit. In Canada, the postal code is a 6-digit alphanumeric piece of information. And so issues like the app continued to deter. And so what I put up here in front of you is this one particular crossing. These are crossings January, September 2022 through September, and there'll be a reason for that. You see a significant decline from 2019. Folks crossing during this time were allowed to for leisure purposes, so the numbers went up, particularly compared to that chart above you. But even though the numbers started to shorten that gap from 66% down to 61%, you still had to fill out this app. And so there was still a deterrent there. October 1st of 2022, the Canadian government says the app is no longer required. Don't have to fill out the app, just show up. You'll see a significant improvement in the month of October, narrowing that gap from 2019. Every time a restriction is lifted along our international border, travelers do return. There's a demand there, but we're still not back to that 2019 level. There still is a restriction in place to enter the United States via automobile. You do still have to be able to prove vaccination against COVID-19. That is a policy that exists on paper. I'll be frank, from anyone I've spoken to, I don't believe it's a policy that exists in practice, but it does exist in paper. And so it still does act as a deterrent. So we are narrowing that gap, but we are still not quite there yet. And that's where the marketing efforts and the work that all of us do becomes so very important. We have work to do. We have to improve. Sarah, if you would please advance the slide. So I just wanted to talk about a few things kind of projecting outward. If you would please, Sarah, bring up the last bit of info on this slide. Looking forward, we're trying to figure out what are our next best steps. And what we've seen is investment that attracts new markets. The Thousand Island Sea region, as I mentioned, around $570 million a year in visitor spending. That's actually up significantly from 2021. We saw about a 30% increase, but we have pockets and markets that are still not there and working for us. What we have seen for the last several years in this region and really throughout the northern border of New York State is investment along the waterway, particularly with the REDI Commission, REDI, that's the Resiliency Economic Development Initiative. That came online once we had those high water that put much of our water infrastructure underwater and made it unusable. There's been significant investment by New York State along the waterways. What many of those communities have chosen to do is essentially shore up their shoreline infrastructure so that they can start doing things such as hosting small cruise ships, as you see here in front of you. We have projects like this. This one particular photo at the bottom is in Clayton, New York. That's the Thousand Islands Harbor Hotel from the Hart Hotels Group around New York State that many of you may recognize. We're seeing investment in places like Clayton, Alexandria Bay, Ogdensburg, Oswego, across its county lines. We're even seeing similar investment in Western New York. We are also starting to receive inquiries from Florida from yacht operators, pilots and crews that pilot yachts that can get into the Great Lakes system saying, we're looking for itineraries. How do we build this out? So we're seeing our communities start to target new markets and shore up their ability to handle different types of visitors. As I mentioned, our visitor spending is growing in this region. We're doing well. According to Tourism Economics, we've outpaced 2019 by just a hair in 2022. But we, of course, want to be wary of things such as over-tourism. We don't have that experience right at the moment, but how do we combat that? We're starting to target higher yield visitors for their destinations, longer haul, places like New York City that, frankly, we, in a destination like this that's relatively small, can't necessarily afford. And so the efforts by the team at I Love New York to allow us to jump on board with cooperative partnerships is certainly appreciated. And the last piece we're looking at is how do we re-engage Canadians? As mentioned in my introduction, while I am the DMO for Jefferson County, New York, I am unique in that my organization does service the Canadian side of the border as well. And since October 1st, since the app was eliminated, just in time for summer, we started running cross-border campaigns. And our experience has been that the last several years of having a restricted border, it's unfortunately the destinations are out of sight, out of mind. We haven't been in front of each other and we haven't given each other reasons to cross. And there's also been a political level of animosity that we notice in the feedback to our ads. Just frankly, the vitriol is kind of ugly. And we see the way the discourse is these days. There has been division among folks seeing advertising say, well, why would I go to the States? Look what they've done. And then conversely, why would I go to Canada? Look what they've done. They shut us out for 3 years. We don't need them. We're doing just fine without them. We know that particularly in our region, we rely on cross-border trade, and as does New York, obviously, right? And we have the Canadian folks that we want to come and visit us. So that's a challenge ahead of us. Very much something we live every day, and certainly wish to work on with the team at I Love New York and the rest of our partners around the state. Sarah, just my last slide. That's just my contact information for everybody. I appreciate you letting me give you a little bit of time just to let you know what we are. If you are not familiar with us, come visit. Pick a warm month where you can jump into the St. Lawrence River or Lake Ontario. We'll get you to the castles, we'll get you out on the water, and we'll show you a place that you wouldn't believe exists in New York State if you've never been. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Corey. It truly is a beautiful part of New York. I know it a little bit because I have an older sister that went to Oswego. So I used to enjoy going up to visit her. And I'm sure it probably hasn't changed much. So I hope it hasn't. Any questions for Corey? George and Tim?
Yes, Christine, thank you so much. Corey, thanks for the great presentation. And I saw from one of the slides, you mentioned something about shifting leaders market or something. If you can explain that, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. What I was referring to, George, is coming out of the pandemic, we had to shift our markets, right? And so in 2020, like so many other destinations, it became, where did we feel safe marketing? And for us, we had that X factor of one of our predominant markets is Ottawa. Ottawa is a very affluent market. It's capital of Canada, high income, a relatively short drive. There are portions of Ottawa, portions of our region that you can be into Ottawa within 30, 40 minutes. And so when that was cut off from us, it then became that shift, right? And starting to talk to in-state visitors on the New York side. But the reality is much of central New York, Western New York, great markets for us, they're core markets for us, but we do miss out on some of that affluence and price point and ability to draw higher yield.
Got it. Well, thanks very much.
Corey, this is Dan Fuller. And I was interested in your comment about some of the travelers, changing their habits. And actually, we saw that last fall when we attended the Toronto Ski Show, that a lot of the Canadians shifted their habits from coming down to New York, whether it's Holiday Valley or ourselves at Bristol, and they changed their destinations to Western Canada. So that's one of the things that we're challenged with right now, is trying to get that Canadian market back, just like yourself. But I thought it was interesting, your comment.
Well, thank you, Dan. And there are things that are working against us. Ontario, for example, had a staycation tax credit program that they put into place last year to really incentivize folks to travel closer to home on the Canadian side. Not to sum it up too quickly, but New York reopened its economy coming out of the onset of the pandemic much sooner than Ontario. And so they've been still a few steps behind us. And so they're still in a mode of really trying to engage their domestic travel. And I'm starting to see, some Ontario marketing here in the stateside. But we have our work cut out for us. It's, I think it's hard for those of us that work in tourism and hospitality, who want to be so welcoming and want to share our story and want to treat people with respect and dignity, to see the effect of some of the discourse out there, and knowing that letting them know that they're welcome is a challenge for all of us.
Well, we wish you all the best, and I get the impression that it's in very good hands with you at the helm. So thank you, Corey. So maybe we'll see you this summer. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you. Let me know, everybody. I'll take you out on my boat.
Oh, that sounds fun. Okay, let's do it. So at this point, I'd like to open up any comments or new business that anybody might have. I would like to just add myself to thank Ross for joining us on behalf of Caroline's Comedy. As you probably read or heard, she lost her lease in Broadway. She was there for 30 years. So it's closed right now, but due to Ross and making these connections that we make at TAC, he introduced us to the National Comedy Center. And because of that introduction, all of the artifacts now from, not all, but many of the artifacts from Caroline's they've been shipped up to Jamestown, and they'll be opening up a special exhibit in the summer with the stage and the Harlequin and the stools that, they were all artistically made. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So more to come on that, but it's all through this whole TAC that was made possible. So thank you, Russ.
Yeah, and it was a great event that got amazing coverage here in New York City for when the Comedy Center was here to officially accept those artifacts. It was just for New Year's Eve.
Right, they got a lot of attention, which, it's a great partnership between New York City and Upstate to show how I Love New York can bring them all together. And in fact, CBS Sunday Morning yesterday had a feature on the National Comedy Center, which, was prompted. So anyway, all good. Anybody else have some new business that they want to add?
Christine, George and Tim,
yes.
I too want to thank you for all you do for New York City. I think, we all basically helping to promote New York State, but the things that you do for New York City, specifically in the Times Square area, I think we could not have achieved all these successes in the Times Square area without your support. So I really want to thank you, from the bottom of my heart, because I think we were all frustrated in the Times Square area, but you have done such a tremendous job, and then bringing the stakeholders together, and we've seen some great improvements there. So I just wanted to personally thank you.
Well, thanks, George. It's a work in progress. There's a lot of hurdles and challenges still before us, but I think now we've got the attention of the mayor and a lot of the stakeholders, as you said. So I do see improvement. And also we look at Times Square and New York City as the gateway to New York State. And if New York City is not going to do well, New York State isn't going to do well. And there is this perception issue that we're trying to tackle. and, you know, and if we can get the reality in check, you know, and basically get crime under control better, then there wouldn't be this perception issue. So it is a work in progress. And thank you, George, for your input.
And certainly I Love New York concurs and agrees, you know, that you've heard us talk about. If we didn't need to know, COVID made it clear that, you know, New York State tourism needs New York City, and perhaps vice versa. But certainly, as the city goes, so goes the state. And so it's one of the reasons we have worked very hard, more so, frankly, than we have in recent past, to include New York City as well. You'll see our winter commercial. You don't necessarily think of New York in winter, but we had beautiful snow-covered Central Park, and you know, New York City was featured in our summer commercials, and you know, there's more of that is going to be going forward and is important.
See if we can get the Canadians and the 1,000 Islands to do the same. Right, and we can all get along. Yep, I'm getting a thumbs up. All right, terrific.
I just want to say, we're so happy that you're on the New York State 250th and that tax there. Yeah. I think it's great, and the support for Phillips Manor and Awana, I think, just really further establishes New York's historic, you know, just an opportunity for us. So look forward to working with you on that.
When I say I'm on, I mean I'm on.
Yeah,
meaning
which
that
is great.
All of TAC is on, right? So even though it's only 13 folks, we are all going to be working on this together, which is very exciting.
And in addition to Christine being on it as chair of TAC, which is an official seat, our commissioner is on it as well here at ESD, and myself and Rich are the designees as well. So there'll be a lot of connection there.
That's great. Yeah. Kelly,
More to come.
I have one other thing just to mention, and maybe Christine, it could be amplified through this group. So I brought this up at the New York State DMO meeting last week, but New York City EDC is looking for spaces and really wants help reaching out to venues upstate, across the state, to help with their humanitarian emergency response and relief centers, sites throughout New York State to temporarily house asylum seekers. And so, you know, it's business. They need 60,000 square feet, and I have some specs and information. So I'm going to send it through NYSTIA and maybe and the DMO group, and maybe we can share it with this group too, just to get it out to as many destinations as possible.
Okay.
I'll mention, I think Kellyanne, NYSTIA is going to be in Oswego.
Yes,
Thousand Islands. Yes, of course we are. So in April, right? Yep, in April.
Right.
So there's everyone's chance to get up there and go.
That's
Make your plans now.
Right. Yeah.
Corey, I hope you have a big boat.
It probably is still dry docked in April, but Pete. Hi, welcome.
Hi.
From
Peter
Historical.
Feynman, the Institute of History, Archaeology, and Education, and the American Friends of Lafayette, which will be celebrating the bicentennial of his visit to the United States in 1824, which began in New York and covered most of the state then, and all 24 states of the country, plus Washington, D.C. So we are busy working on our programs now. He arrived August 15th in Staten Island. We're working with Tall Ships to have an escort to bring him into Manhattan, where there was a parade of 50,000 people. I don't think we can do that this time around, but any help would be appreciated. And then he traveled everywhere. He was, his initial trip was through Westchester on the Boston Post Road up to Boston. He came back by steamboat from the capital region back down to New York, arrived in time for Labor Day and the US Open. So there'll be a lot of tourists around then. He was also from Niagara all the way across to Albany before coming again by steamboat. He did that around the time when the Erie Canal was being completed. He was able to ride portions of it. And he got to visit the Oneida, who are his close friends. So he was also active in abolition and various other activities. So I'm with the New York Committee, and we're putting together the program for that. I see that you have a webinar here for the Underground Railroad. If we could set up something like that for statewide for the American Friends of Lafayette and the tourist organizations and history organizations, I think that would be very useful. We have an itinerary that practically goes day by day, meal by meal, not complete, of where he was and who he met. Some buildings are still there, some aren't. We also know if he's traveling, we may not have the name, but how many roads were there back then? So if we know he went from site A to site B, and there are a bunch of villages in between, then we know he stopped there and gave a talk as well. So it may be the local historical societies, if they start researching their archives and their government records from 1824, will be able to find things. For example, at the conference at Fort Plain on the American Revolution, one person said, "Oh yes, I have a great ancestor, great, whatever, who danced with him." That's not likely to make the government records, but you never know what you may find when you start asking people now what they did. So I know it sounds a little strange that we'll be celebrating this 200th visit here before the anniversary of his 250th visit with the American Revolution 250th, but that's just how it works out.
So August 15th was when he arrived in Staten Island.
August 15th, he arrived in Staten
And
Island.
then when did he go back to France?
I think it was July 1825.
Okay, so a whole year. Okay.
Oh yeah, it was over a year.
Yeah, I mean, maybe
And a lot of sites in between.
When you guys go to world travel, like Berlin, maybe you can hook up with the French. I mean, I assume you're working with the French counterparts. Okay.
That we can take care of.
Could be a good way of sort of pushing all of the French American, Franco-American tourism.
But I want to know, who do we deal with here on your side to create this webinar and to try to create weekend programs or bicycle rides following Lafayette, jogging, whatever it is. There are all kinds of things that can be done.
Where is France as far as in the pecking order on visitation? It used to be like 4 or 5, but
it's down a little bit more, probably like 6 or 7. I'm gonna say.
Well, we're going to do. It's a long shot, but we're trying to get the Hermione back for that.
Okay.
Which is the French ship that brought him over in the Revolution. It's in need of millions of dollars worth of repair. The deadline would be very close to have it done by 2024. But we're going to try for that.
Okay.
Are you already working with folks in Staten Island on all this? I could probably make some connections for you.
No, not particularly.
Okay.
Sure. Edberg would be good.
Yeah. Edberg, and we work with a member, Fit Tours, and they give running tours and biking tours mainly to convention delegates when they're in town. But that might be
Well, we might have an opening ceremony there on the 15th when he first arrives, and he stays at the Henry Wadsworth Vice President's house.
Okay.
There.
Okay. I'll get your contact.
Yeah. Okay.
Great.
So I just want to know.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter.
And I love New York too.
You always come up with you're always bringing up these amazing fun things. I love it. I think the last time before COVID, when you were here, we were talking about the women's right to vote, right? We were having we're supposed to have a big grand celebration, right, at the Susan B. Anthony Museum, and unfortunately that was scheduled for March.
Well, right before COVID, I was also working with State Senator Susan Mayer from Westchester on the 1827 bicentennial of the end of slavery.
Okay.
So that kind of got pushed back because of the American Revolution 250th, because of George Floyd, Juneteenth, and COVID, of course. So I think it's time now to probably, I know it's a long way off, but you think about it, because so many of these sites will overlap. And I don't want people, especially the smaller sites, to get confused. We got Erie Canal here, and then Lafayette's there, and Revolution here. These sites are often very small.
Right.
Not the New York Historical Society.
Well, thank you very much for raising the awareness. I just want to remind you all, March 8th is our next meeting, and it is going to be held in Albany. So if you are interested in going to Albany, contact any one of us. And then remember, this meeting in May has been moved to May 31st, and we will communicate with you on that. So I need a motion to adjourn. Anybody want a motion to adjourn? You want to stay all day? Okay, Valerie? Okay. And David, you want David seconded? Okay. So the meeting is now officially adjourned. It is now 12:17. Thank you very much. I need a gavel.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.